Nietzsche as a young man was Arthur Schopenhauer. As a young man in college, he was studying to become a minister like his father, and ended up, after studying some things, became very critical of Christianity, very critical of the Bible, thought all this stuff was a bunch of bunk, and that very dramatically depressed him. And apparently one day he was walking in the university town, went into a bookstore and found a copy of Arthur Schopenhauer's book, The World as Will and Representation. So let me give you a kind of a brief bit on that. Schopenhauer was a young man and studied as a PhD student with Hegel. Hegel was one of the ones that sat on his board examining his thesis, which was written as a thesis against Hegel's philosophy. And yet Hegel approved it, which, that's another example to me of the quality of person that Hegel was. And by the way, the lack of quality that Schopenhauer had, that here's one of his mentors, his guides, and yet he's furious at Hegel, and treated him rottenly. Well, Schopenhauer treated everybody rottenly. Why is that? Well, he was raised as a very, 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 very rich man in Europe. His father was probably the richest man in Europe at the time, and active businessman in lots of different towns. And being a child growing up in that, he is used to being basically raised in humongous houses that had lots of parties, lots of people. And plus he got to travel. In fact, he was taken and lived in France for a year as a young man so that he could, as a child still, to become fluent in French. And then another year he was taken to England, where he lived with another business associate of his father's and basically learned to be fluent in English. So he was a polyglot, and used to having everything at his disposal. So spoiled, rotten. By the way, even his mother did not like him. Just so you know. He was, his mother eventually, after the father had died, and he didn't want to take over the business, wasn't interested in business. That's boring life for him. He wanted to learn philosophy, study philosophy, and then become the greatest philosopher in the world, which is clearly not something that's possible, because here I am. It's a joke. It's a joke. You could all laugh at that. How much do I pay you to laugh at everything?
I'm going to invoice you at the end.
Okay. In any case, his mother, after all of life, etc., retired to Weimar, where she could attend the sessions that Goethe had, the parties that Goethe had, and it was all the art folks. And so Goethe had him come as well, and he wanted to be the hit of the party, but Goethe wanted to be the hit of the party, and Goethe was the hit of the party. So Schopenhauer hated the parties and didn't like Goethe and treated everybody like shit because, no one was giving him his due, he thought, including his mother, who was very fond of Goethe, and his sister, who kind of helped out a little bit. The sister, but, the only one that really loved Schopenhauer was his dog.
As soon as you started talking
None of
about
you are
Schopenhauer,
laughing. isn't that hilarious looking? What?
As soon as you were talking about Schopenhauer, I wondered if the thought came to my mind of, I wonder if we talk about Goethe. And then,
Goethe-
I didn't know they were rivals with each other, so I didn't.
Oh, well, he was a much younger man, and Goethe was really more of a polymath, involved in science. He did a lot of work on optics. He was wrong about all of it, it seems, although in retrospect it might be coming around to the point of view that he had actually on optics. But the art that he was involved, he was an author. Goethe's most important work at his time was The Sufferings of Young Werther. Sorrows of Young Werther. Depends on your translation, of course. And really, oh my goodness, that actually was the first book to sell like hotcakes, bestseller, and Goethe was the first author to actually become rich on the sale of a book. So that's kind of amazing. But young Werther is essentially a young man that grows up very similar to Goethe himself, actually. That's quite close to being an autobiographical book, with a main difference, and that is that as a result of the despondency the young man feels at coming to realize that none of the stories, none of the meta-narratives of the past are true. There's no meaning to life, but he decides instead to fall in love with a married woman, and then falling in love with the married woman who was what's the word? She doesn't stray. She kept faithful to her husband, and so he got up. He lost hope and went off and shot himself. So commit suicide. Well, Goethe didn't commit suicide, although he fell in love with a young woman who then, because of the family finances, was forced to marry a richer man. He wasn't rich at the time, and so she married the person that the father selected for her, and poor Goethe got to do nothing with regard to living with his love, and yet at the same time. Did you have a question? No, I saw you raise your arm. But so, let's see if I can find this. Well, if I do, I have to. Hey, there we go. I think it's in German, though. Maybe not. I think he's written in this. Yeah, lick my ass, basically. Kiss my ass. That's Dad. She's the one he falls in love with.
Lächerlich. Es ist wahrlich lächerlich. Es ist nicht, was ich glaube.
Scheint dem Gerichtsrat zu gefallen, mein Kind.
He's the one that she married.
Du wirst Herrn Goethe nie wiedersehen. Ich muss zu ihm.
Wird es in seine Augen stehen?
Sicher, Augenblick.
Der Hände sie nicht küssen.
Und so weiter. So there's a movie out about Goethe, and lots of really neat books too. Goethe is really quite the inspiration for a lot of people. I've mentioned Magnificent Rebels, but there is a biographer of many of the Germans that I find, Rudi Zafransky. Actually, it's Rudiger Zafransky. Who has written where are the books? Are these it? Here we go. So I've read the biography he wrote on Nietzsche. I read the biography he wrote on Schopenhauer. I read the biography he wrote on Heidegger and Goethe. And the Goethe book, unfortunately, came out in German way before the English one because he's a German author. And so it was one of those where I felt like, gee, I need to look at it. So I bought it auf Deutsch and never got through the whole thing. But fortunately, the English version came out, and so I bought that. The other ones I just checked out of the library, so they're over there if you're interested. But they're nice size. They focus not only on the life of the individual, but also the philosophy. So it gives you kind of the best possible world, really. And so Rudi Zafransky. If you're into reading about philosophers. But so Schopenhauer, the world as will and representation, critiques the philosophy of Hegel and argues that instead of this dialectical process where the real is the rational and the rational is the real, in other words, the way society appears to us is the real, right? That's the way it's unfolding, that's real. There's no point in thinking it isn't. And all the things we think about in society are part of reality as well, including virtual golf and ideas and abstract ideas and so on. And they're exactly as real as we think of them as abstract ideas. That's not really an issue. No one confuses virtual reality with real reality, except that that's kind of an interesting linguistic dilemma to talk about, whether or not you really made the putt, as opposed to, a real putt on a real golf course, which I don't know if you've checked up here, but even Moose Run is in miserable conditions right now. Even if you had orange balls, the golf balls, I meant, right? You would lose them.
Does it feel the same when you're doing the two? Does the virtual golf feel the same as
No.
physical golf?
No. I mean, you could feel the hit, of course, but you're not really on a tropical island.
But like in your body, if you like make a hit
Yes.
in one thing, does it
Yes.
feel the same way as if you make a hit?
Yes. As far as I can tell. But so Schopenhauer, in his critique, goes back to Kant, where Kant, remember in Kant, arguing that there's the thing in itself and we can never see it. And there's the noumenal, which is like God, and there's also the ego, which you can never see, etc. Remember with Hegel, all of that is part of our abstract understanding of the world. So those are real just in the sense that they are abstract, but they're part of what we observe. I mean, it's very American, actually. I remember I would argue that Hegel's philosophy really becomes American pragmatism. With Schopenhauer, though, he sticks to Kant and argues that the thing in itself is the will. What drives the world is the will. Fate. Now, where does this come from? Schopenhauer is considered to be the first to have been influenced in Europe by Buddhism. So this is essentially karma. He's applying kind of this idea that there's a will, a fate in life, that is the thing in itself that drives everything. And there's an interesting connection artistically here, because Schopenhauer inspires this guy. How many folks have heard of Wagner? Okay. You've at least heard some of his music. Dum dum da dum, dum dum da dum, dum dum da dum, dum dum. Okay, so that's the Wedding March from Lohengrin, which has words, by the way, in German. How about this one? Bum 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 bum. Okay, I'm not talented enough. Let me. I don't even have to spell out the whole thing.
5 words you
No,
pronounce wrong.
this is
2
not
years
what I was
before your
looking
brain
for.
starts shutting down. De-
You have to email me and let me know if I was even close to the right pitch. I was? Yeah. No kidding. I disagree with Dr. Harvey Wilkinson. I think I have some talent. It's really more of a joke that I keep making that according to him, I didn't have talent. Because I didn't have perfect pitch. Okay. So where does the rite of the Valkyries come in? The Valkyries are the women spirits that come into the battle after the battle is over and pick up the bodies of the dead heroes and take them to Valhalla, which is where the gods all, in the German, Wotan and Fricka and so on. And so the main, he wrote lots of stuff. Parsifal was his last one. Focused on the Christian myth, if you will. It's not exactly, it's but it is. At the same time, he did Lohengrin, which is, the one that Neuschwanstein, the castle. If you've ever been there, the whole castle is kind of a homage to Lohengrin, to Wagner, and Lohengrin is the knight, the swan is the one that brings Lohengrin to rescue Elsa, and et cetera, et cetera. So fascinating story. Germans love it. But the big one is the Ring cycle. And the Ring cycle is essentially a 4-opera series. The first opera, Das Rheingold, or The Gold of the Rhine, is 3 hours long. And the second opera is Die Valkyrie, which is one of the Valkyries, Brunhild, the one with, the long blonde hair, the sword, the spear, the helmet with the horns, the breastplate, that has to be quite huge because she's always a big soprano, they actually sing Hiya to Ho, there's this words that go with the ride, these Valkyries variously staged so that you've got these these horses literally arriving on stage one way or the other with the maidens, you know, on them with their armor and everything, arriving to the battlefield, dragging the bodies around on the stage as they're singing, "Hello, Valtralta," you know, and you know they're all their names, etc. Weishild, Brunhild. Brunhild means brown Hilda. Weishild is white Hilda. You know, so, in any case, what's the plot all about? I mean, the third one is Siegfried. Hitler loved Siegfried. Notice the Siegfried line. You know, I use so many of Wagner's terms as part of the war, etc. And the last one is Die Götterdämmerung, which is the twilight of the gods. So the basic plot follows kind of German lore, and it's about Wotan and his gods building Valhalla, right? You know, as their palace. And they have hired two giants to build this. And they've got to pay the giants off once they finish building it. So they finish building it, they come for their payment, and the agreed on payment was one of the gods. Freya was going to be their payment, and they wanted to come and collect Freya. And all the gods are like, can't give them Freya. You know, what the heck? What are we going to do? Our eternal life is thanks to Freya, because she's the one that takes care of the apples that grow and make us, you know, live forever. And so we can't give them Freya. So when they come, then no, you can't have Freya. What could we have instead? Well, how about there's gold? We'll take, you know, a big pile of gold that we know about, you know, and so Wotan and Loge, who's Loki in a lot of movies, right? You know, he's the trickster. They go down and they find, you know, the dwarf who's created this gold. And why has he done this? He has a magic Tarnhelm, which is, you read Harry Potter, that's the same name that they give to his secret cloak, right? You know, Tarn cloak, you know, whatever. And so it's an invisibility helmet, basically. But he can also use it to transform himself into different things. Well, Loge asks him to transform into a frog, and he turns into a frog, and Loge steps on him, and they capture him, and they capture all of his gold, including a golden ring that he's made, which is a ring of power. I'm sure you've heard of rings of power before. Tolkien clearly gets the idea. It goes way back to Plato. Remember, there was a ring that one of the stories had where the guy finds the ring and he's invisible, so et cetera, et cetera. So in any case, so they steal the gold and use this gold to pay the giants. But Wotan is already obsessed with the ring and has put it on. And it's been cursed by the dwarf that he stole it from. And as a result, you know, the giants see it and they say, well, you know, the whole pile isn't here. There's still some gold over there on Wotan's finger, right? Which is the same word in German. Right? And so Wotan has to give the ring up. And then at that point, one of the giants kills the other one because he wants the ring. And they're like, ooh, that ring is dangerous, right? Glad I got rid of it? No, I want it back. But meanwhile, the giant takes it off, turns himself into a dragon to hide the gold behind his body and guard it, right? But Wotan wants it all back. And so he ends up having a son and a daughter. Sigmund and Sieglinde are twins. The Schwellingspaar, right? Twins. I love that. In German, it's Schwellingspaar.
What is it?
Schwelling?
Schwelling?
Schwelling.
They're getting bigger and bigger.
Well, and par means two, because they're twins.
Oh, Schwelling's par. My friends will like
Schwellingspaar,
that.
yeah. So in any case, the son Sigmund's job is to go and kill the dragon and get the gold back, right? And Wotan can't do it because that breaks his contract. It would break his spear, and his spear is the list of all his contracts, so his power would be broken, and he would well, that would be the end of the gods, right? So instead he has this son. The son can go and do it. Well, as the son is about to go and kill, the dragon, with the sword that Wotan made for him, needful, right? I might play that piece for you if you have enough time. But in any case, the wife points out, that's always the wife, points out, you can't do this. That's still breaking your contract because you made the son, and the son has the sword that you made for him. So it's still you breaking your own contract. So Wotan is furious, but he goes and he stops his son from getting to the dragon and basically has him killed by someone else. Kills him too because he's so pissed off